Tina, great to see you. We'll get to all the memes in just a second, but let's start off with the substance, the meat of what we were supposed to get here. How much do we really learn about either one of these candidates, Harris or Trump?
Well, judging by the pre-debate expectations, the burden was on Kamala Harris to introduce herself. We've had Donald Trump as president, and the vice presidency is more of a backseat kind of a role. So American voters were keen to get a sense of who she was. It wasn't huge detail on policy, which you wouldn't expect to see in a format like this. But there were so many elements where the candidates' personalities were communicated. I mean, what you just showed with Harris, striding over forcefully to shake hands with Trump when there was so much discussion. Would they shake hands? And there hadn't been a pre-debate handshake in something like 8 years. All of these elements start to lay the groundwork for what we saw unfold before us, which I think took a lot of people by surprise.
I am curious as to whether this ends up swaying voters in any meaningful way. I mean, you kind of mentioned that obviously Trump himself is definitely a known quantity. We talk about the record viewership that we're starting to find out that we had last night on this. But we're only, 55 days away from the election. I mean, this debate, or at least the first debate that we got between these two particular people, is coming kind of late in the cycle.
It's late in the cycle, 55 days, as you said. In European elections, this is not unusual. We had elections in the UK and France over the summer that took place within a few weeks' time, which was kind of merciful by comparison.
Yeah, we envy you guys over there, trust us.
Well, I mean, you should pity me because I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning watching it on London time and kind of parsing views on both sides of the Atlantic. And also, of course, how this looked in Beijing, in Abu Dhabi, in Johannesburg, right around the world. We have Trump talking about people eating pets, and Harris kind of honing in on exactly how many Polish American voters in the state of Pennsylvania might be troubled by Trump's position on Ukraine. That was a remarkable contrast.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I want to go there to foreign policy because the former president made a couple of comments there saying he only wants Russia's war in Ukraine to end, but clearly not specifying which side, and also citing Viktor Orban's support as a key ally. What's the message that sends to our allies in Europe and Asia?
Fear. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, is in the doghouse, to use the technical political science term, with the European Union, has been picking fights and violating norms and conventions as well as agreements for some time. And so to cite him as a source of support to convey his global stature is a surprise to Europeans. And again, the international impression here is, how can it be that so many U.S. voters take Trump seriously? We didn't hear about the kinds of things that people on the street are focused on, corporate tax rates, position on cryptocurrency and these kinds of things. But we had this kind of unplugged Trump, and the spectacle of Harris, who again, isn't as well known, but I'm from the state of California, from the Bay Area. She's a fierce prosecutor, and we saw that on display. She blew a lot of people away. Does it move the numbers?
Yeah.
That is very hard to say, but it has given the campaign a boost. It's given fundraising a boost. It means they're getting more volunteers. And most of all, in my view, motivating the Democrats, who are a majority in numerical terms, to vote.
Yeah.
Might actually be more meaningful than persuading independents who normally break Republican anyway.
So, Tina, how does this debate ultimately shape your expectations for what the post-election uncertainty will look like? I mean, we're not going to get an answer immediately right on that Tuesday evening. And if we don't get a clear outcome for days, like in the last cycle, do you expect it to look more like 2020 or 2000?
before we go there, I wanted to make a point about my fellow political analysts, and they are mainly fellows. They love calling this election over and over again for Trump and keep getting hammered by changes in the race. It's sort of like the way economists are, affectionately described as calling 13 of the last 10 recessions. Mm-hmm. Political analysts keep calling it for Trump over and over again and then having to digest news. I'm not calling it for Harris. I am saying that the reality of the way the data play out here is, you mentioned comparisons. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was 4 points ahead at exactly this point on 9/11 at the commemoration ceremonies, which we remember she wasn't feeling very well. Then the Comey report came out, so that was the October surprise, and Trump goes on to win. We've really got to be prepared for more swings and roundabouts.
Right.
And then, as you say, the uncertainty around, when we wake up on November 6th, I don't think there's going to be a clear or agreed answer.
Tina Fordham, just preparing us mentally for the surprises that are to come in the days and weeks. Thank you so much. Tina is geopolitical strategist and founder at Fordham Global Foresight.